really frightens us? Is it the monster hiding under the bed? The ghost you swear you saw in the attic? Or is it something deeper, something you can't quite put your finger on? Well, let's explore those shadows together and figure out what truly makes a story scary.
The master of horror himself, Stephen King, he absolutely nailed it with this one. See, it's not always about the jump scares and the gore. The deepest, most real terror, that comes from the unknown. It comes from that space we let our own minds fill with the absolute worst case scenario. That closed door, it's really a gateway to our own personal fears.
And what's so fascinating is that whether you're talking about an ancient myth or the latest blockbuster horror movie, all the great ones tap into this shared fundamental DNA. There's a real art to crafting fear, a whole toolkit that writers use to get right under our skin. So experts say the recipe for terror has 5 main ingredients. First, you need genuine fear. Then you harness the incredible power of the unknown. You keep your audience glued to their seats with cliffhangers, and then you totally shock them with plot twists. And finally, and this is kind of the wild part, you offer just a tiny little glimmer of hope. Now, of all those elements, the unknown is probably the most powerful. It is the horror writer's absolute best friend. It's that dark, uncharted territory where literally anything could happen. You know that noise you hear upstairs when you're home alone? That shadow that just flickers at the edge of your vision? That's the unknown at work. And this right here just says it all. The monster you don't see is always, always scarier than the one you do. By leaving things a mystery, a writer isn't just telling you a scary story, they're inviting you to co-author it with your own personal anxieties. And let's be honest, what we can cook up in our own heads is always way more terrifying. Okay, so these principles aren't just some abstract ideas floating around. They're the actual building blocks of nightmares. And if you look at folklore from all over the world, you can see how different cultures use them to create their own unique brand of terror. So let's dive into the super chilling world of phantoms from South Asia. Each one of these spirits taps into a totally different kind of fear. Take the boot, with its feet on backwards. That plays on our fear of the uncanny, right? That deeply unsettling feeling when something looks human, but it's just wrong. Then you have the churel, born from tragedy, which gets at our anxieties about revenge and social guilt. And the pret? That's the horror of an internal, gnawing hunger that can just never, ever be satisfied. And this folklore gets incredibly specific. The churel is terrifying because she was once one of us, a human soul that was twisted by pure injustice. But the Pishachini? That's something else entirely. It's a demonic, predatory force. So one is like this dark reflection of our own society, and the other is just a window into a world of raw, unfiltered evil. But as chilling as all these supernatural tales are, they actually lead us to an even scarier kind of horror. What happens when the monster isn't a ghost or some demon? What happens when the most terrifying story is about us? Because sometimes the most horrific things aren't supernatural at all. You can find them in the quiet desperation of real life. And there's no better example than the classic Hindi story Kafan by Prem Chand. Now, Kafan, which means shroud, isn't about ghosts. It's a story that proves the most chilling monsters are often the ones we create ourselves, through our own systems, through our own indifference. It digs into how that constant, grinding struggle just to get your next meal can wear away everything we think of as being human. So in the story, we meet this father and son, Gisu and Madhav, who are so completely crushed by poverty that they've basically built a wall of apathy around themselves. Their indifference is like a shield against constant pain. And through their story, we get this brutal look at how systems of caste and class can literally strip people of their humanity, forcing them into a state where just surviving is all that matters. And this all leads to the story's really shocking climax. Madhav's wife dies in childbirth, and so they go out and beg for money to buy her a proper funeral shroud, a final bit of dignity. But then they spend that money on a feast for themselves. It feels monstrous, right? But the story forces you to ask, is it just pure cruelty, or is it a desperate, defiant grab for one single moment of satisfaction in a life that has given them absolutely none? A life where that fifth element of horror, hope, has been completely snuffed out. So, what's the connection between a vengeful spirit from folklore and the tragic apathy of two men in a village? Why do we even tell ourselves these kinds of stories? Well, the answer points to a purpose that's much bigger than just a simple scare.
Scary stories are really just a mirror. They reflect our deepest collective anxieties. A tale about a churl holds up our fears about how women are treated. A story like Coffin reflects the absolute horror of social injustice. They're a way for us to process the things that truly haunt us, both the things we can see and the things we can't.
Which really just leaves us with one final lingering question. Are we drawn to horror to escape the troubles of our world, or do we seek it out as a way to confront those very troubles, but packaged safely in a story? From ghosts born out of tragedy to the quiet horror of a life without hope, these stories hold a mirror up to our world. And what we see in that reflection, well, that might just be the scariest thing of all.